Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bonnie Jeffrey. I'm a professor in social work at the University of Regina, and I'm also a researcher with the Saskatchewan Population Health and Evaluation Research Unit. And I'm happy to present an update on a project that we've been doing for the last several years around supports in rural Saskatchewan. And I'm going to share some information from our projects and highlight some of the successes and challenges that have been experienced. Before I get started, I just want to recognize that we are a team of people that does this. You can see the list of our team members on there. We're all based at University of Regina and affiliated with SPHERU. So the overall project is a 5-year project to implement and assess interventions to support the social inclusion of dementia and their care partners in rural Saskatchewan. Now, recognizing that we could not do the entire rural area of Saskatchewan, we did select to focus our project on Yorkton, Melville, and the surrounding rural communities, about the area of the former Sunrise Health region. As I mentioned, it's 5 years, so the project is funded until 2024, and we received funding from the federal New Horizons for Seniors program. The key objectives of this overall project are, as I said, to improve the feeling of social inclusion, both for those with dementia and their care partners, with a focus on those living in rural communities and small cities in the province. And second, to improve public awareness about dementia. Third, to reduce the level of public stigma about dementia. And finally, to improve the supports for customers, clients, employees who are living with dementia, and their care partners living in small cities and rural communities. So as you can see, we're actually targeting different levels of intervention: individual, community, and organizational. So through this, the funds that we have from this project, we're able to fund specific projects that address those objectives that I just outlined. So we've funded 7 projects. 5 of them are ongoing, 2 of them have been completed. And in today's presentation, I'm going to highlight Saskabilities, the Alzheimer's Society of Saskatchewan, the Godfrey Dean Art Gallery, and the City of Yorkton. The other 2 projects, the Radar Memory Clinic, just started in October, and an upcoming project called the Cognitive Kitchen will be starting in January. And the final project was a needs assessment that was done by Parkland Valley. And that was done at the very beginning of our project in order to sort of focus us on what would be the most important areas of intervention in the Yorkton and rural communities that we're looking at. So for each one of these, I'm going to go through successes that they've identified, plus some of the challenges. The Dementia Friendly Life Enrichment Program is being offered by the Saskabilities Council in Yorkton. And this program provides individual support for people living with dementia and their care partners. And to date, they've supported 48 individuals in 9 different communities. And as you can see, they have 2 facilitators who are part-time and another person who's full-time. And the 2 facilitators, you can see how much they've traveled. And this is what happens in rural communities. 8,500 kilometers, and they provided over 400 hours of service. So one of the successes that they've had is increased social connection through group activities. And they've organized 6 group outings. And these have included visits to the museum and mini golf activities. They've also been successful in developing some partnerships with stakeholders in the region, including the Medical Social Work Department, which refers people to their program, Home Care Department, which receives referrals from their program, and the Yorkton Public Library, who's been very supportive of this initiative and has provided library cards for easy access to dementia resources. Some of the challenges that they've identified is that they have very quickly, there was quite a take-up in their program, and probably not surprising to most of us. So they've had an increased workload as a result of growing number in clients and demand for the service. So they've been trying very hard to meet this demand and not have a waiting list. So they've actually had their program facilitators scale back the services so that they can allow more individuals from the waiting list to access the program. They've also identified, and in the process of delivering this project, that there are gaps in care services for older adults. They get requests for services that is really beyond the scope of their program and could perhaps be provided by other organizations, agencies like home care. They also identified that stigma leads to some clients having a reluctance to use their services, especially in the group activities. Stigma because people don't want others to know that they or their partner has dementia. They're not sure how they'll be treated or dealt with. So stigma, again, is very important when it comes to providing individual services. And of course, a challenge is sustainability of their program once our funding ends in 2024. Next is the awareness campaign and dementia-friendly initiatives, which is being delivered by the Alzheimer's Society of Saskatchewan in this Yorkton and rural areas. And there are two major successes in areas of public awareness and organizational engagement. They've hosted ABCs of dementia presentations to 27 communities in the region with over 235 participants. And they've also circulated an ad mail, social media posts, and radio campaigns that have reached over 22,000 households in this area. On the organizational engagement side, again, they've been reached out across 20 communities with 28 different organizations, many different types of organizations, businesses, libraries, pharmacies, faith groups. They've built connections, and you can see the list there, with the Yorkton Public Library, the Red Cross Family Visitor Program, Bank of Montreal, PharmaSave. And they did really want to highlight that Yorkton PharmaSave has implemented dementia-friendly services to their customers. Some of the challenges they've experienced, and the first one is challenges that many of us experienced, was that we started this project in early 2020. And so the pandemic restricted travel and in-person contact. So it was very difficult to really develop meaningful community engagement at the early stages. However, I would say they've really made up for that since then. The other challenge that they've identified is that corporate organizations and businesses often equate dementia with long-term care, and they fail to see that a few changes that they could make can provide a more inclusive and accessible environment. And finally, they did have as an objective of their project to develop a knowledge and learning hub for dementia-friendly communities, which would be accessible to anyone wanting resources in this area. And they've been challenged with some shortage of staff, so there's been a bit of a delay in the development of that learning hub, but their plans are still to proceed with that. Thirdly, the project is called Belong Where You Find Yourself, and this is being delivered by the Godfrey Dean Art Gallery in Yorkton, primarily in Yorkton, but they will be taking the artwork out to some rural communities. There are two artists who are working with people with dementia and their care partners, and they've been building relationships, identifying interests, and supporting engagement in the artwork of their preference. So they're very focused on client-centered approach, where the individuals in this program select the kind of art that they would like to work on. To date, they've had, the artists have had meetings, 7 planning meetings via Zoom. They've had 20 in-person working sessions, and they've also had 2 in-person group art-making social gatherings, where participants have engaged in games, hands-on activity, and discussed progress on various art projects. There are also in-person sessions taking place at the care home. Once the project started, and there were some individuals from the care home in Yorkton who expressed an interest in participating. So they were wanting to be very supportive of this, so they expanded into that area. And so this also provided an opportunity to connect and establish a network of support with other sectors providing services for persons living with dementia. Some of their challenges is, again, they had to postpone their startup date due to some restrictions. The time to commit for the program, some of the participants indicated they have difficulty connecting to the program because of their busy schedules and time conflict with other sessions. And certainly project participants are very sensitive to privacy, as are the lead artists who are working with them. The artists are individuals who have had experience working with people with cognitive challenges, and they work very hard to incorporate appropriate language and to destigmatize dementia, to encourage a more inclusive working environment for the participants. Another thing that they've noticed frequently in working with participants, some of the families are quite interested in what they're doing, what grandma or grandpa's doing, or your aunt and uncle. And families have expressed limited education or knowledge about dementia, which just highlights the importance of the work that the Alzheimer's Society is doing. Finally, the final project, which has been completed, was the City of Yorkton Public Indoor Facility Audit. So they were supported in a project to review all of the facilities that are under the mandate of the City of Yorkton and complete an audit of the physical facility. And this audit was completed with a researcher and 2 couples with lived experience with dementia. And what it does is follow some guidelines that are there around things that can be changed in the physical layout, physical barriers that could be addressed to make it more inclusive for people with dementia. So this report is finished. They recommended changes and upgrades, and the report was presented to Yorkton City Council, outlining some of the development and installation needs and some recommendations which were put forward for consideration in the City of Yorkton capital planning budget cycle for 2023. But there were some immediate impacts. Seat arrangement. The chairs were arranged in a more dementia-friendly manner in the Flexi Hall at the Gallagher Center in Yorkton. Lights were adjusted in the family change room areas of the swimming pool. The report also provided justification for proposals to revamp the swimming pool hallway, and the new golf clubhouse added a family-friendly washroom into their plan. Challenges, of course, budget challenges. As I mentioned, they did report their recommendations to the City of Yorkton Council, and their recommendations would likely be considered with other projects or items that Council has to consider, especially for capital planning and capital costs. Competing priorities. They indicated that once the restrictions were lifted, people got back to getting their regular programming up to speed. People might have been deployed elsewhere and they were back in their positions. So really this meant that some of the managerial staff just didn't have the time to give prompt attention and consideration to the recommendations, and that some of the other staff in facilities and maintenance, they were back in their usual duties and they might be less available to work on this particular project. And then kind of another unexpected one was returning to normal after restrictions, which we all looked forward to. But if you recall, during the time, many organizations or physical buildings would have left and right markings on the stairs to keep the traffic flowing only in one way, in and out signs so that you only used one door to come in and go out of a building. So those signs were up, but they've indicated that these were removed after the restrictions were lifted. So these had been very helpful directional arrows for people living with dementia. So that is sort of a brief summary of some of the successes and challenges faced by those projects. And so just to say, what have we learned so far about this in terms of meeting the needs of people with dementia and their care partners in rural communities? First, we do know that people living with dementia and their care partners can't really separate them, want and need direct services, supports, and programs, and that they would like these supports to be as close to their home rural communities as possible. We've also learned that there continues to be a great need for more awareness and education about dementia. And we did find there is an interest in how organizations can adapt their physical facilities to make them more dementia friendly. So work in this area is very promising. Now, the last 2 projects or the last 2 bullets are a bit related. Sustainability of all of this work after the funding is completed in 2024 is a challenge, but certainly continuing to engage with local community-based organizations is really quite essential for considering any sustainability efforts to continue this work. So thank you for your attention. I would be happy to receive any comments, or if you do want to contact me after the presentation, I would encourage you to go to our website where you'll find a lot of detail on all of these projects, plus ongoing reports and newsletters that we put out around progress. And final slide is that if you do want more information, please feel free to contact Michelle Harasny, who's our project coordinator, at that email address, or myself at the email address there. So thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to hearing your comments.